A lot of us focus on, oh, I'm losing money, I'm spending, loss, 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 loss. Yes, but you're always, always, always getting something in return.
I am so excited to have such an inspiring, empowering woman on the show today. Ximena, thank you so much for being here and welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. You truly, when I dove into your story, I got so inspired and I was thinking like, wow, what a power woman. Like, I would like to start with where you grew up and where you're coming from, because I feel like now if we look at your Instagram feed, your website, whatever you do, it seems like, like, so like, okay, yeah, of course, and so on. But then if you hear your story and the circumstances that you grew up in and so on, then it's kind of like, wow, okay, this is so impressive, all the things that you had to overcome. So I would you tell us just more about that?
Yes, of course. And I love that you brought that up because I do talk about abundance and success, manifestation, all of that good stuff. And just by looking at an Instagram feed, like you said, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, whatever, she has a good life. But that was not always the case. And I grew up in Colombia. I love my country, proud Latina. But the situation in Colombia back then and even now wasn't the greatest. My family, a few of my family members actually were kidnapped and ransomed for money. And the last one was my grandmother, who was kidnapped and murdered. And I was 17 years old at the time. So, you kind of grow up in this environment where terrorism is normal. It's like, it's normal to hear that, oh, people are kidnapped, and it's kind of like the day to day life. But actually moving to Canada allowed me to see that, wow, there is actually a lot of trauma and things that I didn't process and things from my childhood that are affecting me now as I was trying to build that life that I wanted to live, that abundant, rich life. And I don't mean rich in terms of money, but like rich that feels fulfilling and good. So I've been doing a lot of inner work for the past 5 or 6 years, when I realized that a lot of the things from my childhood were actually affecting me now. And yes, we moved to Canada as refugees. I didn't have anything. I didn't speak the language. I didn't speak English. And we had to come here and start fresh. Left everything behind, sold everything in Colombia. And we came basically with 2 suitcases, my mom, my sister, and I. And we had to literally build our life from scratch. So I have lived and seen the power of really focusing on an abundance mindset and focusing on the opportunities and what's right in front of you versus focusing on the lack and the scarcity. And that's why I'm very passionate about abundance and abundance mindset and abundance living, because it's not just about money. It's like, there's so much more to the word abundance and richness, and it truly starts with ourselves. It starts with how we treat ourselves, our thoughts, our beliefs, all of those things that really shape and create our reality.
Absolutely. And I want to dive way, way deeper into that topic because I find this is so precious. But would you take us a little bit more to like, okay, you arrived in Canada. You're 17 still, or how old were you?
17. Yeah, I was
Yes.
17.
And how did you establish your life in Canada? How did it start? Like you probably started school, but you didn't understand the language. Like there must
Yes.
be so much like
Oh,
fear
yeah.
and doubt, and it must be so overwhelming for a 17-year-old girl to go through that.
It was very overwhelming. First of all, I was blessed to have a pretty good life in Colombia. I never had to work in my life. And my parents, it was an interesting dynamic because they were always fighting about money. My mom didn't really have a lot of money, so she was like depending on my dad, but they got divorced when I was very, very young. So I grew up with divorced parents, and my dad had a lot of money, but then he went bankrupt because he had a very unhealthy relationship with money and was spending it all and didn't care about his money. So he eventually went bankrupt. So we went from having a lot to not having enough. But I was never put in a situation where, where we were struggling or we didn't have enough food on the table or anything like that, luckily. But when I came to Canada, I was living in a refugee home for about a month, and that was a big reality check because you are basically sharing a bathroom with everybody on the floor. So I went from having my home and living a comfortable life to being placed in this refugee center where I had to share the bathroom. We had a communal dining room, and it was a very hard but humbling experience. And then, yes, as you were mentioning, I was basically thrown back into high school, even though I had already finished high school in Colombia. But because I didn't speak English, they couldn't accept me in any college. So I had to go back to redo grade 11 and 12. So I was actually one of the oldest kids in high school because I was 17 in grade 11, which technically you're almost like done at this point. So I was like the oldest one in high school. I didn't understand anything. I don't know how this works, but somehow works. They just throw you in the system and they expect you to learn. So I was carrying a translator everywhere, translating every single word. I don't know how, but I managed to graduate out of high school. And I started to speak English maybe when I was like 2 to 3 years in Canada, like after 2 to 3 years. So that's when I started to speak more and more, but I had to start working right away. So I had to get a job because we had to help my mom. And I was going to high school, I was working at a restaurant, I had like multiple jobs, and I was constantly like hustling. So I really grew up with this hustle mentality that I had to work really hard because I'm an immigrant, because I came from the background that I came, and because I didn't want to repeat my mom's and my dad's story. So I grew up with this belief that I had to work really hard for my money, which is now something that I've done a lot of work to unlearn and to understand that I don't have to kill myself to make money.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is wow, this is something like we cannot imagine to go through and so on. And it's so beautiful, I think, to see kind of like the woman that is here, like today, like so empowered, so like believing in yourself, confident, speaking perfect English. And it's, I don't know, I think you're just the perfect example of what is possible. And
Mhm.
yeah, I love that. I love
Thank
those
you.
stories.
Thank
And if
you.
you tell it yourself, and it's just so much more powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot because that's really what I want to embody in my business, is to be an example of what is possible. And I'm not here to say that, there are no challenging times or that life is easy, because that is not the case. For many times I was like, why is this happening to me? Like, this is not fair. I have doubted myself 1,000 times. I struggle with imposter syndrome, all the things which are going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's what you choose to focus on and what you make out of the situation that matters, because we're all going to go through challenges. And it's not, at the end of the day, it's not a competition as to, okay, like who has the most challenges in their life, but it's like, how can we become a version of ourselves that is resilient and uses these struggles and challenges to grow and expand and evolve and truly like create the life that we desire.
Absolutely. And wouldn't you have gone through these things, you would have probably never like discovered shadow work and, kind
Exactly.
of like how to transform limiting beliefs, mindset work, and so on. So
Yes,
I feel
totally.
like all these challenges, there's always a gift in them. And it's just on us to find this gift. And of course, in the midst of it, it's always hard. But then looking
Yes.
back, we can kind of like put the dots together and see like, okay, it was also a blessing.
Yes, yes, totally. Mm-hmm.
And how did you then? Okay, so you managed to finish high school. Today you're a business owner, you're coaching people and so on. How did you manage? Did you go to college and then drop out because you pursued your
Yes.
business? Did you finish college? Like how did this happen then?
So I'm actually a multi-passionate human being. There are so many things that I'm passionate about, and even in my business, you can see that I don't just talk about one thing. I do talk about abundance and money and all these things, but it all comes down to us and the relationship that we have with ourselves and our body and our thoughts and all these things that truly matter, that need to be healed before we can experience or manifest abundance in our life. And I went to college for hospitality and tourism. I've always been very passionate about traveling and customer service and, the luxury hotel life. So I went to school for that. And then when I started doing my internship, I realized that I actually didn't want to work in the hotel industry. I didn't want to work in the hospitality world. I am passionate about hotels and travel and customer service, but when you're, on the other end, when you are in the back office, it's a whole other world. um for some reason, I actually never got a job at a hotel, but I was hired to work in an office, so I became the office manager, and then I was always put into like office roles. So I became really good when it comes to operations and admin work and things like that. And then I got a job at one of the largest banks in Canada. And that was about 11 years ago. And I started working there, kind of like climbing the corporate ladder. And I became certified as a financial advisor. I did all my certifications to be able to sell investments and mortgages and all of that. And throughout the process, I realized that, hold on a second, this is actually not what I want. I was like 23 or so at the time. I'm like, what am I passionate about? Like, what do I see myself doing? And I've always been very passionate about wellness and well-being and health. So I went back to school for nutrition. I went back to school. I got certified as a holistic nutritionist. I started coaching women, mostly to help them lose weight. But I myself had a very dysfunctional relationship with food. And I started to realize that us as women tend to have not the greatest relationship with food. We're like terrified of carbohydrates or sugar, and we focus more of that restrictive mindset, which I call more of the scarcity mindset. So it's all about, what can I remove? How can I restrict myself? Oh my God, I don't look good, and we beat ourselves down to lose weight, which is something that I started to change with my clients. And we started to focus more on adding versus removing. So more on that abundance mindset. So what can you add to your lifestyle that is going to help you feel better and have more well-being? And then I started to do a lot of mindset work with them. And it turned out that my coaching sessions were more about mindset and the relationship with food than the actual, okay, here's what you're supposed to be eating. So that led me into becoming certified in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. I became obsessed with the study of the subconscious mind and how we operate as human beings. It's just fascinating. That's when I learned about limiting beliefs and how they impact our reality and our life, and all of these things. I started to do shadow work and work on my own wound of not enough, because I always felt that I was not enough, no matter how much I accomplished, no matter how much I had, no matter how much weight I lost. This was also a bit of an aha moment for me. I was a bit obsessed with weight loss. So I signed up for a bodybuilding competition, and I set this like crazy goal for myself to shred a bunch of weight and like just be super fit. So I trained for a whole year. I cut out carbohydrates. I was like very strict with my diet. And the moment that I was standing on stage a year later, I thought that that was going to be the biggest accomplishment of my life and that I was going to be so happy. And when I was there, I realized, like, oh my God, hold on a second. I am here and I'm exhausted. I'm hungry. I don't even feel like I am that good or that I look that good. I was still comparing myself to the other competitors. That was the moment that hit me. And I said, okay, this has nothing to do with how much weight I lose, with how much I accomplish. At this point, I had on paper the perfect life that I always wanted. I was engaged, was going to get married, I had finished nutrition school, I was coaching clients, I was competing in this bodybuilding competition, and yet I felt so empty inside. I don't know if this has happened to you, that you just keep checking boxes, and once you achieve those goals, you're like, but hold on a second, this is not it. So that's what led me into the world of personal development, rewriting your story, redefining success, redefining abundance, and like truly living that rich, abundant, fulfilled life every single day of my life versus waiting for an accomplishment or a goal to happen.
Yeah. I am very, very familiar with that feeling. And that, believe me, it's like a very big part of my story too. And especially this kind of like exterior perfect life, and inside it just feels miserable. And
Yeah.
yeah, so story of my life too, and of many, many women I'm talking with on the show, or even men
Mhm.
as well. And I'm sure lots of people listening or watching kind of, it rings a bell as well for them, because maybe they go through a phase like this right now, or maybe they experienced it themselves. What would you say? Was it that you had kind of like a wrong definition of success for you, and you were like following exterior success? Or do you think this kind of empty feeling fit was kind of due to um, missing self love or self worth? Was it the underlying belief of I'm not good enough and nothing could, like, unless you switch the belief and transform that belief? Like, that is the only thing that's changed it? What do you think was kind of like the root cause of it?
I think it is really a combination of both. On one hand, I was definitely living someone else's definition of success, and I was just checking boxes, going on autopilot. You know, I thought that having the good job in a big company with a good pay, getting married before 30 was success. And you are just check, 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 check. But I never really took the time to sit with that question. Like, what does success look like for me? What does it feel like? What does it mean to be successful? And then on the other hand, it was a combination that I didn't feel good on my own. I didn't feel that I was good enough. And at the same time, I was also trying to be someone who I was not. I was not okay my with my flaws and the things that maybe I don't love about myself, but that are also part of me. And I was not at the end of the day my true authentic self, because authenticity is not just about liking the parts of you that you're okay with and that you like. It's also liking the parts of you that you are maybe not proud of or that you don't love, but that also make you and who you are. So it was a process of embracing those shadow sides, like those shadow parts, and understanding who I am. That was a big component for me. So doing the inner work to understand, okay, who is Ximena? What do I like? What moves me? What drives me? What are my values? What do I value? What's important to me? And how does everything else fit in the equation? Like, do I actually want to work at a bank, climbing the corporate ladder? Is that what makes me feel good and successful, or is it something else? And I realized that it was actually something else for me. It was helping people, inspiring, motivating. That's what drives me. That's what moves me. So it wasn't just about making money, but it was about making money doing something that I'm passionate about and that drives me. That's very, very important for me.
I so understand. What helped you to embrace or to like or maybe even love the parts of you that you were originally not so proud of or kind of like wanted to, those shadow parts that we all want to repress because we're always in a good mood and we're always happy and everything's just sunshiny because that's kind of like what we want to portray, but then actually we're also sad, we're also ashamed, we have all these other emotions. What helped you to embrace the whole Ximena with all her emotions and all her
Ooh,
aspects and traits and behaviors?
that is such a good question. And I will say that it's totally a journey. It's not an overnight process. It wasn't easy. For me, it started with accepting my body, the way that I looked, because I was so fixated with the weight loss and trying to change how I look that I had to start there. I had to make peace with the fact that I am healthy. Maybe I'm not super skinny, and my body, that's not my happy place. Like when I am very skinny, I am also restricting a bunch, and that is not sustainable. So I had to like really let go of this idea that I was going to be, I don't know, 130 pounds or whatever. That is just not what my body wants. So I had to let go of this idea that I have to be a certain weight and start to do the work to accept myself. But at the same time, for me, self love, especially what you see on Instagram, wasn't very relatable because I didn't feel that I could be like, oh, yes, I love and accept myself and I'm so happy and blah, blah, blah. That was not the case for me. For me, it was more about self acceptance. It's like realizing that, okay, maybe I'm not like super in love with my roles and my cellulite and all those things, but they're part of me and they have gotten me here, and I am strong thanks to my big legs. I can do squats. So it was about feeling appreciation and gratitude for the body that I have versus also going almost to the extreme that, oh my God, I am obsessed and I love my body. It doesn't matter what it looks like, because to me, that philosophy didn't feel relatable. Um, so that really helped me to just accept and appreciate. I didn't have to be super in love with it, but I could appreciate it for what it is. And it eventually stopped bothering me. I stopped trying to force myself to lose weight or fit into all clothes. I started to get rid of clothes that don't really fit my body. And I've been pretty much the exact same size for like 5 years or more. And I don't really diet. I don't restrict myself. I live my life. Food is no longer an obsession for me. I no longer feel stress or anything like that. So healing my relationship with food and my body was a big, big component for me of my journey. And then it was also like small little things, like accepting the fact that, I started my business and I wasn't going to be for everyone, and not everyone is for me, and that it's okay. So making peace with the fact that I'm also not here to help everyone in the whole world, and that my message is not going to resonate to some people. So it was doing that, also that work to let go of the fear to not be liked, people pleasing, all those things. So little by little, I feel like so much better now. I can fully also detach from my business, which I think that as an entrepreneur is a hard thing to do, because we become the business, and it's hard, right? Like if you experience rejection, you take it personally. So for me, it was also doing that inner work to understand that my worth has nothing to do with my business, and then my products, my services, they're totally separate, and that yes, there is uh, you know a limit, I guess, as to how much I'm supposed to be charged and what the value of the services are. But that value and that price and that service has nothing to do with my own personal value.
Absolutely, because our values cannot be touched. And that is
Totally.
something I wish our society would like tell us more, because I feel like we all actually, like, if talking to so many people, like, we all share the same story. We all think our value is tied to our performance, to the way we look, to our bank account, and so on. And it's actually all of us that we fear deeply to be rejected, and that's why we think we're pressing ourselves into roles that we are not, and instead of showing who we truly are. And I think that is why it's so important that we're having these conversations. This is why I'm doing this podcast, because I feel like the more like people like you share their journey and their story and their fears and what they overcame, and that we are actually all sitting in the same boat. And what is showing, especially in the social media world, but back in the days it used to be TV or whatever, it's like that is not reality. And that is, of course, not just portraying and displaying all the fears that we're having, all the limiting beliefs that we're having, not the moments. Of course, the moments of doubts, we don't put our camera in our hand and film it on Instagram, because we're so wrapped up in our doubts that we don't feel like sharing that right now. And
Yes.
so thank you so much for sharing this. This is so important and so precious, really.
Yeah, no, of course. And I feel at the end of the day, these are all businesses, right? The weight loss industry, the beauty industry, these are billion-dollar industries that have to play on our insecurities in order to sell us. So it's understanding that this is part of their job, this is part of their business, but I don't need to fall in this trap, and I don't need to be a consumer for the rest of my life because they are playing on my own insecurities. So it's knowing that you are enough and making decisions from this place. I was actually having a really good conversation with some of my members for my membership about this, about the whole, when do you draw the line, right? Like the whole beauty industry. Because don't get me wrong, like I love to put makeup on and do my hair and all the things that have to do with beauty, but they no longer define me, which I think is important. I have nothing against people who want to lose weight. Even myself, I have my own fitness goals. I work with a personal trainer. I go to the gym regularly. I eat healthy. But I stopped fighting with my body, which I think is a completely different energy and approach. And same with the beauty industry. It's like, yes, you can put makeup on and lipstick and do all the things because it makes us feel good or whatever. But to me, what matters is that we as women do not let those things define us. And it's like, oh no, I cannot, nobody can see me without makeup on because my skin is terrible and I look this way. And like we start beating ourselves down versus just using it because we want to, not because we need to.
Absolutely. Yes. I can agree 100%. And um I think it should be something that kind of like helps us to express ourselves even more, and to feel like, I don't know, I'm a person, I don't wear a lot of makeup and so on, but then I have these days where I sometimes feel like today I want to, just for myself, kind of like pretty myself
Yeah,
up. And it just gives me this good, beautiful feeling like I took time for myself. And to me, it's an act of like taking time for myself. But I so
totally.
understand that this trap that, like, then, we all get older, wrinkles start, hair gets thinner, whatever, all these kind of things, and it's not getting better, and it's like patches that can never be fixed. And it's so easy to get lost into that thing of like, okay, and then, like, I don't know, I fixed that, and now I all of a sudden I'm noticing my nose is too big, and now I got to do a different nose, and now my lips, and now my da. And I think it's such an endless story. And if we started on the inside, then we can just kind of support what is, if it's already kind of like blooming on the inside, then we can just have those tools as an expression to like a rich inside already. And this is
Mm-hmm.
why I love that you say, actually, you were talking with all your weight loss clients so much about mindset, and it was all like actually the internal work and not really what they put on their plate, but it was mostly like how they see food, weight loss, their body, and so on. So it's beautiful.
Totally. Yes, because honestly, and anybody can go on Google and just like research or follow whatever cookie cutter diet, and it's going to, eventually give you results until it doesn't give you results. Because we're the only way to see long-term sustainable results is to actually address the root cause, which is our beliefs, our limiting beliefs, our relationship with food. That is the actual problem. A little cup of rice is not going to hurt you, but if you eat rice nonstop, that's a whole other story. So, and it's very interesting because now that I deal with money, I see it is like in this very similar lens, like food or carbohydrates or sugar or even money, like they're not good or bad, they just are. And it's our relationship with these things that make it good or bad. A lot of people have this idea that, like, oh, rich people are greedy and they're bad and money is bad and money is the cause of fights and problems and all these things. And it's like, it's not. Like, money is just a piece of paper. It's like the person who is handling the money that clearly hasn't done work on the inside to heal their stuff and is now using this tool as something negative in their life.
Absolutely. Yeah, you teach a lot about money, and it's actually funny because I thought wanted to really touch on that topic. So thank you for getting the wonderful link over to the topic of money. Um, what I wanted to, did you already, when you worked in the bank, like, did you already understand the concept of money mindset, or was money back then for you just kind of like the numbers and the bank processes about money? Or how did you start to invest time into your money mindset?
Yes, great question. It was when I started working at the bank, it was just the numbers. It was investments, budgeting, making sure that you have enough money saved for retirement, save more, spend less type of mentality, which for me, as someone who had more of that scarcity mindset, was very restricted. I was very restrictive with myself. Same with food, right? Like I was constantly restricting myself, and it was the same with my spending. And I actually realized that I had to heal my relationship with money because when I started my business, I don't have a product. I am the product. So I have to charge people for my time, my expertise, my knowledge. And because obviously I want to help, it's very easy to not charge for my services. So I started to work for free, give a lot of discounts. I felt guilty asking people to pay me. And I had all these issues when it came to charging people for my work. And I was like, why is this happening to me? I am good at sales because I came from a sales role at the bank. I was a top performer. I don't feel icky about sales. I think that we're all selling all the time, and I will never sell something to someone if I know that they don't need it. But at the same time, I couldn't really charge for my services. So that's when I had my own aha moment. And I said, okay, hold on a second. This is actually deeper than just a sales script or how to sell or what to say. But it was more about my own relationship with money. That I had all of these beliefs that I have to work really hard to make money, and money doesn't grow in trees, and all the things that I grew up with. My parents were always fighting about money, so I really thought that money was the cause of fights and problems, and that because of money my parents got divorced. So I had this very negative narrative deep down in my subconscious mind that I had no idea was there until I started to dig into all of that crap to realize, like, wow, there's some stuff here. Like I can definitely use some work to heal my relationship with money. So that's when I started. Because again, I also realized that it didn't matter how much knowledge I had, which was similar to nutrition. I had all this knowledge, but I also had a very dysfunctional relationship with money and with food. And it was not about the knowledge. it was about, it was an internal thing that I had to heal and deal with.
How would you say, from an abundance mindset perspective, how should we approach money?
Good question. From an abundance mindset, first of all, money is something that we exchange for something of value. So it's really, it has been around forever, right? Before we used to trade, okay, I'll give you strawberries, you give me blueberries or whatever, and that was the currency. And to simplify things, we turned to money, which was, the piece of paper at the time. But we have to first understand that every time we're spending, we're getting something in return. I feel that a lot of people feel guilty when they're spending money. There's a lot of guilt associated with it. There's a lot of fear associated with money. And when we feel these emotions, we're basically giving our power away to this piece of paper. So the first thing that I would say is, from an abundance mindset, is focusing on that value exchange. Now, I'm never going to advise anybody to like just spend for the sake of spending, but spend money from a place of empowerment versus fear. So every time you spend money, I like to ask myself, is this actually a good investment? Am I, like, is this worth what I am paying? Does this feel like a hell yes? So I ask myself a series of questions before I actually spend that money. And then I do it from a place of empowerment, whether it's a yes or whether it's a no. Before, in the past, I didn't spend money because of fear and scarcity, and because I felt that, oh, I don't have enough, therefore I can't spend, which is a totally different energy. And money is energy at the end of the day. It responds to our energy. So if I'm terrified and I feel guilty and I feel all of these emotions, that's what I'm putting out in the universe, but that's also what I'm getting in return. So part of having this healthy relationship with money is understanding that you're the one who is in control, and that this is just a tool that you're using, and that it's up to you how you use this tool. And from an abundance mindset is focusing on what we get versus what we're losing. A lot of us focus on, oh, I'm losing money, I'm spending, loss, 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 loss. Yes, but you're always, always, always getting something in return. Even people who have debt, obviously, if your goal is to get out of debt and pay your debt, great. But don't guilt trip yourself for having debt. You Debt is a choice. You chose to pay with your credit card or line of credit or whatever you paid with. So let's own that choice. Know that you got something in exchange for it, and then take action to move forward and get yourself out of debt, from a place of empowerment versus a place out of guilt.
Thank you. That's absolutely amazing. And this is again focusing on what you have. And it's like so much. I feel like this is just the secret to a happy and fulfilled life, to put the lens of our focus just all the time to what is there instead of what's lacking. And this
Yes,
is not a one time thing, like, or at least in my experience, this is something I have to remind myself daily because
daily.
our brains just want to keep us safe. So naturally, it shows us, oh, there's fear, there's that, da da da. You got to protect yourself and so on. But we have the ability to keep choosing to, like, no, I choose abundance. I choose abundance. I have so much. There's so much I got to be grateful for. And I always say thank you to money when I pay something. So even
Yes,
if I just grocery shopping or something, I'm grateful. I say thank you real quick to money, like in my mind, not out loud, just for people. I'm not that crazy. And I say thank you for, like, I don't know, having this food, like, paying for this food and so on. But still, my focus is with the money. And I love that you said that we focus on what we get, like really putting the focus on like the abundance of food, clothes, whatever you're buying that you get in exchange. So thank you so much for sharing that.
totally. Yes, it is. Like you said, it is a daily choice until it becomes a habit. but you have to really choose that abundance mindset, because naturally we're wired to focus on what can go wrong, on the lack or the fear or the scarcity. That's how our human brain works. So it does take time to like focus on the abundance and what we do have. And that doesn't mean that you're complacent or that you don't want more or whatever, but it's like knowing that you can want more and have more, again, from this place of abundance and already feeling good enough. And that applies to everything else in life. Again, it's coming back to like the weight loss example. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to lose weight and that you're complacent and that it is what it is and this is how you are, but you can approach your fitness goals from a place of enoughness, from feeling good enough. And then because you feel good about yourself, you want to take care of yourself. So because of that, I am going to nourish my body, and eat healthy, and go to the gym and do these things. But it's from a place of abundance versus a place of scarcity, which would mean that you don't feel good about yourself. Therefore, you have to do it.
Absolutely. Ximena, as a last question, everybody who wants to learn more about you, where can we find you?
Yes, you can find me everywhere at Mena Cardenas. My website is menacardenas.com. And I'm currently I offer one-on-one numerology readings, which we didn't talk much about numerology, but that's like a whole other topic. But it's a tool that I use for self-discovery, self-development, to understand, okay, what are the things that I need to personally work on to really find that success and all of that. And then also my membership will be a great place, which is the Aligned and Abundant membership.
Amazing. I will link everything in the show notes. And if you want, we can absolutely do a part 2 where we fully focus on numerology. But as you said, you have so many fields of interest and it's so hard. So I just wanted to let the conversation flow. And I guess that's what was supposed to be today.
Amazing. Yes. No, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, too. Truly, you're an inspiration. So keep shining your light. And yeah,
Thank
thank you for
you.
being on the show.
Now, I would like to know from you, what was your biggest takeaway and how can you put it into action starting now? Leave a comment below or hop over to Instagram at HannahWiz_ and leave a comment under the post of today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and never forget to shine your light.